Okay, so just to introduce this is, I agree with John, the overarching planning meeting for our preaching theme for 2023, where we're going to collaborate together. So last year we had people speak and kind of give us the sermon starters, we called them. And then we would make our own sermons based off of what they taught and the sermon starters. We collaborated with graphics for PowerPoints and graphics for each series. We made, for a little while anyway, family devotionals. Josh made midweek and small group discussions for every sermon, which was awesome. We did a lot of stuff, and I think the biggest goal was just to become better preachers. The number one reason that a person comes back to church a second time, it's not the band, it's not how your church building looks or your lack of a church building looks, it's the quality of the preaching. And so the good news is you as a church leader, as a preacher, are 100% in control of how quality that sermon is. And so that's the real goal of this, is to help us to be better preachers. We couldn't really do expository much last year. We dabbled in it a little bit, but I think I figured out a way for us to do that this year. I'd still like to bring people in to teach some of these series and even just teach on expository teaching and preaching, which we'll talk about in a minute. But for the most part, this time we're going to have planning meetings like this before each smaller theme throughout the year. And then we will work together by assigning out different things to create sermon series. We'll be texting each other. One of the things that didn't really get off the ground last year is we tried to use an app called Band. It's like GroupMe. I don't think it matters what we would have used. It didn't really work. Only a few people were active on that. So this year, whoever is a part of each smaller theme, and I'm going to go through the calendar in a second here, we'll just text each other. We'll have a group text going. Texting is really the only thing I think that works. And it should be, I'm thinking it'll be groups this size or so that do the different sermon series that we have. So with that, I'm going to go over the spreadsheet briefly and show you like how I envision this working. And then we'll pause for questions that you guys might have. Sound good? Cool. Let me get on here. Okay. So you guys can see the spreadsheet. You probably have already seen this. It was in all of the many emails I sent out that had way too much information on them. But all of this is subject to change. So this meeting today is just overview of the whole thing. We're going to get ideas. We're going to try to figure out how it might work. I'm sure it will morph as the year goes on. But these, the series titles, I'm going to say, even the passages, like we can change this stuff up, but this is a rough idea. And so I'll go through the sermons first, and then for our church in Lansing, we're gonna kind of be a little bit liturgical. If you're familiar with that concept, it means that you have a set amount of scripture that you want to get through as a church together in the year. And so we'll also be adding something for our communion messages and some prayer passages from the Psalms to it. So starting off the year, you'll see here, can you guys see my cursor right now when I do that? Okay, cool. So we'll have, there are blank, like free weeks. And so you can do these sermons anytime. Like you can push it all back a little bit. You can skip one. You're not beholden to following this exactly. And so if you have a guest speaker in there, there are free Sundays, and those can get moved to wherever you need to move them. The first sermon would be just an introduction to the whole series. I'll show you the start of that in a second here. But this first sermon series, something like meeting Jesus again for the first time and looking at the first 5 chapters of John. John is showing us who Jesus is, the Gospel of John. I've got a bunch of resources. Hopefully you do too. We can talk about that in a minute. But the gospel, John's gospel is not synoptic. It's not like Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And that, I think, is on purpose. John wanted to show Jesus in a different way, even than the other gospel writers did. And so these first sermons, I feel like, and the first chapters of John are like a wake up call. This is who Jesus really is. And so, in those chapters, you get into changing water into wine as the first miracle. You get into Nicodemus coming at night and not understanding a thing that Jesus is saying. And so it's really good stuff. The woman at the well. This is good stuff all the way through. So that's the first one. And then I'm trying to fit with the Christian, like what's happening in the world as well. So the second series is the Jesus diet, and that has to do with Lent. Lent is the season. We probably don't do a whole lot with that, but I feel like it's a good thing, could be a good thing to work into our churches. It means to give. That's what the word Lent means. And so some kind of challenge in there every week of giving something up. Maybe not doing a full Lenten challenge, but a giving challenge each week could be really cool. And then that all leads up to Easter. It's so cool to preach on Easter. As you follow along, is John chapter 11, which is Lazarus rising from the dead. And so the being able to link that to Jesus ultimately and truly rising from the dead, I think will be a cool sermon. But the theme that I have there is love without limit. Again, all of these can change as you guys pray about it and think about it. But I think out of those chapters, you can kind of look at what are things that limit our love. How do we hold back? And how did Jesus not hold back? And then the last part of John there is it is finished. And so looking at the crucifixion account and the resurrection in the Gospel of John. Then we jump into the summer, and we're still agreeing with John. So we're going to go into John's letters, one chapter at a time through First John, and then Second and Third John. There's some free weeks in there. We did a booklet this past summer called Treasuring God. It's right here. And one of the things I've noticed is that over the summer, Christians just, they're taking vacations. The church gets disconnected. You want to hit September. You're like, everyone's back. Kids are back in school. Let's hit the ground running. But instead, you're kind of like picking up the pieces from the summer. Doing a booklet helped us to stay united. And we really did hit the ground running this fall. And the same is true with Christmas. So we're doing a Christmas booklet as well. The holidays have that same disunifying, disconnecting effect. So I would like to put together a booklet for First, Second, and Third John for the summer, and you guys maybe could all help with that. And then in the fall, we get into Revelation, and I won't go through the whole thing, but you can see that there are different parts of Revelation. I think like it would be pretty hard to jump in, especially that middle section of Revelation. If you were gonna not do much of this, but then just jump into that part of Revelation, your church would probably be pretty discouraged by what's going on and confused. So that might be one where people have to hop on for the whole fall. But I love preaching Revelation. I think all of these are pretty like provocative. Like people want to know what's going on with Jesus, with Revelation, all this. So that's the preaching plan. The communion plan, what I've got is it's every week. It doesn't have to be, but what I want to do is work with whoever's doing communion to do a 5 to 7 minute lesson that highlights two verses where Jesus is alluded to in the Old Testament, and where you can then find that connection with the New Testament. And so I think if we get through 30 of these, it'd be pretty miraculous. But I think that'll be a really cool theme for communion. So it's not just the same, thing every week for communion, but we're really learning during that time. And the people who are giving communion get to learn. And then the last thing I want to do is just have prayer from the Psalms. And so the goal for this is to have, it starts with just Psalm 1 and then 2 of the Psalms, and then pretty much 3 Psalms a week. And just one verse from each of those Psalms as a springboard into prayer. And so, Psalm 1 talks about not sitting with the scoffers or walking in the way of sinners. So someone could read that verse and then pray about that. Like that could be during the worship time, in between songs. That could be before I preach, but try to work those in. The goal of this is, and this is so cool, is if you look at the big picture of it for what your church gets, what you're offering your church, and what the Spirit can do with your church is you go through all of John's writings in 1 year, in depth. You see Jesus in the Old Testament and New Testament for communion in up to 50, 52 passages. And then your church prays through one verse from every psalm out of the 150 psalms, all in 1 year. And so super ambitious. There's no way it's all going to happen. But imagine if it did. I think we're really feeding our churches. And so again, there's free weeks. You can jump in and out. Like if you have a different plan, you could jump out in John 10 and come back in John 18. It's not like people are going to be missing that much because they've got the Gospel of John they can read anytime. And so I'm going to take a pause, and then I want to show you some of the resources that are already integrated that are going to make this even more amazing of a plan. But do you guys have any questions about that spreadsheet, about the plan so far? Does that make sense?
Thanks, Joel. I looked at it before. It really looks like it's going to be great to go through that. I especially appreciate the free days. That really does allow me to have the guest speakers and everything else.
Good.
I have to jump back into the Chicago meetings, and so I got to jump off. But whatever you need to delegate to me, you know what I can do. So, and we've worked together in the past. Just give me whatever you want.
Awesome. Thank you, Phil. Tell everybody
Right.
everyone I said hi.
Look forward to be with you guys more.
All right.
Thanks, Phil.
Cool. Okay. Any other questions or thoughts so far?
Hey, Joel, do you think the psalm that is read, do you think that would tie in, like integrate with a welcome? Like if that was part of the welcome and in the prayer, or is it, you see it as something more in the middle of the service, or does it matter?
I think, I think probably doing it during especially if there's going to be three, it's probably almost essential that that's what the person prays for during the welcome. Let me show you. So the way I've got the service set up to like actually make this possible is another spreadsheet. Yay, spreadsheets. So you guys can see this. So January 1st is open, but I've got the communion text and the psalm, and then who and when it'll be shared. So that'll be like Mike during the welcome. And then the next week there's two psalms. So that'll be like Lisa during the welcome, Sally during singing, Frank during the close, when there's three psalms or something like that. Or if someone could pray, we could have an extended prayer time where we pray through all three or whatever it is, but really teaching the church to pray through psalms, which is like one of my favorite things just to do in general. But you can see the, just for like, and this will be shared with you guys, you'll have to fill the main parts will be filled out, but you'll have to move stuff around and make it work for what your church is doing, because you'll be on a little bit different schedule. But it should be pretty easy to copy and paste. But for each week, we'll have the lead person here, and then what the sermon is going to be. And that will be linked in so that we can grab that. You can use that as a sermon starter, but I don't want to get ahead of myself too much. But that's a way that you can kind of, it's a lot to do all of this, but I feel like a good spreadsheet can really do a lot of good work. In fact, I have a tattoo of that on my back. A good spreadsheet can do a lot of good work. It changes colors every week too. It's pretty sweet. Cool. Any other questions before I show you a couple more things here? Okay, cool. A few things that are going to make this really cool and ways that we can kind of integrate it right away. But this is why we needed to have this meeting in November for stuff that's happening in 2023. Is I want to show you this. Where did that go? 1 second. I don't want to show you that yet. No. Okay, this is why recording this maybe isn't going to work. Okay. I don't want to share that. I do want to share this though. Here we go. Okay. Nope, that's not it. Okay, maybe this will work now. Okay, so there's a few things that we can do to integrate. So I made this. This is something that you could print out and give to your church. But one thing that kind of, as I was putting together the spreadsheet and figuring out how to do this preaching plan, a few really cool things happened all at once. And one thing is, have you guys seen the scripture journals? We use the ESV Bible from the pulpit, but NIV makes them too. And so this is a scripture journal. I know I'm in a small box here, but this is just the book of John, and it is on one page the text of John, and on the other page blank. And so our church, I want to help our church to do a better job taking notes this year. And so we're gonna buy these for everybody in the church. Here's the thing: it's beautiful. It's the whole text of John. It's a notebook, and it's only $2.99 per journal if you buy it in bulk. And so that is not a huge investment. And then the cool thing is they make it for every book in the Bible. So first through third John are already made, and Revelation. And so you've got like built-in notes for people to take either during their quiet times based off of the sermon, or they could take notes in this as they're listening to the sermons on these texts. I think that's so cool. And then with that, so what you could do is, if you don't have the budget or you don't want to buy the booklets, the journals for everybody, they can just buy their own. And so the QR code here actually leads to Amazon, and there's like a illuminated version of that's $6, but people could buy their own, like for Christmas, like get ready for church next year, buy your own. And then this is really cool. You guys know Damon and Ivy Brogue. They lead the church in Fox Valley, Wisconsin. They have been doing a podcast, and they just started this podcast. It's called Bible Study with Damon and Ivy Brogue, and it's awesome. It's really good. It's not super technical, but it's like encouraging. And lo and behold, the first book they chose to do for their podcast is the Gospel of John. And so I think they have 31 episodes of the Gospel of John. And so just putting that QR code out there, people can listen along throughout the week and get a totally different perspective on the Gospel of John. Like, this is immersive, next level, really cool stuff. And then the last thing is I made a store with the logo. And the reason I made a store with a logo is because that is the easiest way for you to get stuff, or to have people in your church grab stuff for this series if they want. Here's the Bibles in bulk, by the way. Can you guys see that? So case of 50 is $150 for the.
Can't see that.
You can't see that?
No, but I clicked on it before. I mean,
Oh,
but it's
got
not
it.
showing on the Zoom.
Okay, cool. Thank you for telling me that.
You're welcome.
There we go. So there's that. Can you see it now?
Okay, so you didn't design that particular cover. I was like,
No, I'm not that good.
I was like, dang. Okay.
Here's I agree with John. So this is like the logo for it so far. And if you guys, this is the stuff I did, but from here, I want us to take it. And so if you are like, I'm really good with Canva, or I even know how to use Photoshop or Adobe, you can make something better. That would be awesome. But you can see here, it just puts that logo on everything. And so people can, if people want to buy it, they can. I can definitely see a lightweight hoodie coming in my life and all that. And so, and I'm not trying to make like a profit off of this store. It'd be amazing if enough people were interested in the Gospel of John that it made anything. I'm sure it will not. But I'm sending you guys this stuff, and so I'm not trying to make anything off of this. But there's that. And then the other logo is like for the back of shirts and for posters. This is taken from John chapter 1. And this is like, well, what do you agree with? Well, this is what I agree with. And I put it on the front of something. It just does it automatically. But on the back of a t-shirt, I think that's a pretty cool thing there. So, and then it can be a sticker. It can be a magnet. It can be a journal. It's all those things. Both of the graphics are all of those things. But I think it's just cool. It's very evangelistic. People are going to ask, who is John? What do you agree with? Where do I get that sticker for my laptop? That kind of thing. So that is that. So those are some cool ways to integrate it. And then I own the domain for iagreewithjohn.com. I don't know what we could do with that, but we could do a website that just leads people to a Bible study series or helps, direct people to our churches or whatever it is, but something that people could check out. But I don't know if we can do anything with that or not. So that's some of the integrative stuff, Sunday planner, all that stuff. Do you guys have any thoughts or ideas or questions at this point before we get into more nuts and bolts kind of stuff? Nothing. Okay, cool. And I want you to start, I do really want to encourage you to start thinking about it, dreaming about it. Like what are ways that we can make this really something like the whole thing with last year and for this year too, is if we work together, we can produce more quality material than even big churches do. Not that it's a competition, but why not do what the big churches are doing if we can? I know that some of the regions in Dallas did the stuff from last year because they were like, we don't even do this much integration with our sermon series, so we want to do that. And so we can do it. That's what I believe. All right, so let's talk about how we're actually going to make it happen. What we'll do is the next meeting, I think, is December 6th, and we'll have a meeting like this, but it'll be a lot less of me talking, and although I am leading this, but it'll be a lot more of you guys and all of us working together through the text. And there might be a few other people who are specifically jumping in for this first series that will be a part of it. So we'll work through that. And then I would like to bring people in. And then what we'll do after we work through the text and come up with ideas for sermon titles and points and illustrations, we'll make assignments so that we can kind of all share the load with it. And so here are some of the things that we will need to create. And everything's a month or 5 weeks before the sermon series starts. So we'll have a few weeks to create this stuff before we need to get all the things done. But we'll make a folder in Google Drive, a subfolder in the folder that I'll share the whole folder with you guys in a minute here. We will need to make sermon starters. And so different people, like if this was the first meeting for the first 5 chapters in John, we got 6 people, there'd be 6 different people, each person taking a chapter in John or one of those sections. And you would write a sermon starter, which isn't a full sermon, but it's an outline that you can jump off of. And I might make a template for that so that it's more uniform. We all preach differently, and that will reflect itself. But if we have at least a template, it won't be so different from thing to thing that we can't do it. So I will do that unless somebody else feels like they could make a great template and wants to do that before our first meeting. We'll need PowerPoint, Keynote, social media, basically like a graphics package. And this is stuff we did all last year, so it's totally doable. We can do this. Midweek and small group discussion notes. I think Josh has volunteered to do that again, but we can work on that too. We could do family devotionals if somebody has a passion for turning each sermon into a quick family devotional. I've been doing the last couple of months making a Bible talk every month, like one script for a Bible talk. And that's been really cool. And so if we made a Bible talk for each of these series, like the first one, meeting Jesus again for the first time, that'd be a great Bible talk that you could teach your church and people could do. And then we'll need the group of actual participants that we can start texting each other throughout the week. That'll be awesome. And the month. And then if you have any other ideas that can kind of spark engagement. So does that make sense for what we need to produce each week, each series? And are there any questions on that?
So I was just curious, do you have any way of knowing in 2022 how many total people used your Preach With Me information?
Unfortunately, I do not. That was maybe the biggest flaw. And I guess it doesn't matter that I know or not. I can see YouTube views, like some of them got over 100 views. for some of the sermons. People would text me occasionally like, hey, this is so helpful, this is great, or this is terrible, I hate it. No, nobody did that, which is nice. But my guess is anywhere between half a dozen to 2 dozen, depending on the series. Like I think the max was probably like 24 churches were using it, and the minimum probably got down to 6 or so. But I really don't know. But this time we're gonna know because we're working on it together. We're gonna be texting each other. There's no band app. It's gonna be a little more grassroots. So, but for you, like in terms of sharing the load, fully writing out one sermon and then working off of other people's sermon starters is, I think, a little bit of a time saver, but also a quality booster, which is great when those two things can go together. And that's what happened last year or this year with 2022. So good question, Rusty. Any other questions or thoughts on this? Does it make sense? I will say, so we did this in our church. I had a preaching group that would meet once a month on, it was like a Monday morning at 5 a.m., which was brutal. It was painful, but it was anybody who was interested in helping with the sermons. And we would go through like 4 sermons at a time, work on like title, illustration, points, and it was great. And these were not trained preachers, but it definitely helped me preach better, helped me have different perspective from different people. And so doing it with a group of evangelists, I think, is going to be really cool, and it totally can work. Or it won't, and then we'll just try something different. But I think it's going to work. Okay. I saw Phil put some resources in the side here, but something by Dante Culpepper. I didn't even know he was still a quarterback. So that's awesome. I'll get those notes. Do you guys have people that you would like to you'd like me to ask to come and teach us to do expository preaching or lead a session? I know, Josh, you had a couple people. Who were those people? It was Dave Eastman.
Yeah, I think Dave Eastman is a good expository preacher, and he's retiring at the end of 2023. So I figured let's snag it before he does that.
Yeah.
And then my other thought, I'm a student right now at Harding School of Theology, and I have a homiletics professor. I'm taking a preaching and sermon development class right now. If you're unfamiliar, Harding is associated with Church of Christ. And this dude is just super solid, has a doctorate in homiletics. So I think that he could lead a session specifically about expository preaching, why it's important, and how to do it. And I bet that he would be willing. His name is David Bland, Dr. David Bland from Harding. And if
Bland?
that's some Bland, I know, not a great preaching last name.
I mean, for homiletics too. Yeah.
I know.
That's
I
tough.
know, but a
That's
great
great.
guy, and it would be an easy ask if that's something that we thought.
That's awesome. Who else would you guys put on a wish list in terms of expository preaching? I'm thinking Ed Anton.
Yeah, Ed.
Who else might be good for it? I think that we haven't done a whole lot of expository preaching in a lot of our churches, so this will be really good. And I do want to say, especially just even speaking of the word bland, I think that expository and bland get kind of unfairly put together. There is nothing bland about it. It should be so exciting just to preach from the text. And I do think, we do all come into it with a hermeneutic, like with a lens, and you want it to be a good lens, but they're just being honest about that. Like even having a series title like Meeting Jesus Again for the First Time means that we're coming into it looking for ways that Jesus is shocking. That's a lens with which we're doing it. So yeah, anyway.
I'd throw out Bill Molden, maybe.
Oh yeah, that'd be cool.
We've been blessed to have him here in the Heartland. I've enjoyed listening to him.
Yeah, and he's a great teacher, but also a great preacher.
Yeah.
Really good to listen to. That's cool.
You got a Brian Perkins as well. He's pretty.
That'd be great. He did, it was really expository for 2022. He did the Sermon on the Mount for us, and it was great in May, I think.
So I kind of ADD'd out there for a second, lost my train up. Bringing these guys in, what can you run through that one more time? Like, when would you bring them in? Is it they're teaching this particular group here? Is that kind of the idea?
Yeah. So, well, first of all, did you get the tickets? Is it happening? Are you a Swiftie?
My
Yeah?
daughter is a Swiftie.
Okay, that's great.
I don't know
wanna
about you,
say
but
yes,
I'm feeling 22.
Oh man, no, I'm feeling 42. Every bit of it. Okay, so yeah, so I don't know if we can do this every time or not, but if we could get a few people throughout the course of the year to come on, I think that the collaboration meetings that we have will be. I would block off a couple of hours where we're
Okay.
working through these, and so for the first half hour, if David Bland or Dave Eastman, pretty much it probably needs to be someone named Dave, it looks like, comes on and gives us a little bit of like, hey, here's how I approach expository preaching, or hey, you guys are preaching through First John right now. Here's how I would approach those epistles. There's different ways that they could teach, and then they could kind of just be there with us as we develop these sermons, giving us ideas, illustrations, all of that stuff. So,
Okay.
yeah, so it's all about working together. Where last year we kind of like gleamed off of people. This is going to take more of us working together. I think it'll be even better, but it'll be cool. So
Your list of Dave's reminded me of another one. Dave Pakta just finished up his PhD, and he's a great preacher.
cool. Yeah, maybe it could only be Dave's. That would be like a really cool twist. That's completely unnecessary.
Dave Hooper. All right. So.
Yeah, who else have we got? Let's go.
Agree with John and with Dave.
Yeah,
You know,
That's right.
yeah. What about?
Just-
I agree with David. We could do 1st and 2nd Samuel next year.
Yeah, there you go.
Actually,
2024.
you don't always want to agree with David, do you? Okay, but he was a man after God's own heart. Anyway, that's cool. Okay, so I will say on this first one, I definitely talked more than I thought I would, and it won't be like this in the future. You guys got to come with stuff. So, speaking of that, are there any other ideas now that you've kind of seen the plan or heard it more? Any other ideas that you can think of or things that you've done in the past that could really make this pop?
I don't know if I have necessarily ideas, but just kind of some suggestions from going through the Preach With You 2022,
Yeah.
which was really good, great for our church, great for me personally. It really pushed me, because I would have a sermon series and I'm like, I don't think this way, and I had to work it, and it pushed me. It was good. And there were some that was like, yes, I agree with the flow of this, and it was really good. One thing that I was it kind of was disconnected with the year theme a bit at times, with the rooted theme. So I don't know if each of these things will kind of have like a, as we have the graphics and, maybe a unified graphics with the sub topics per month or per series or whatever. That's the only thing that I was thinking about, because I was like, oh yeah, let's go back to rooted. We're talking about rooted, and then we're talking about messy church, and then let's go. So it was a little disjointed, but yeah, I'm excited about this. I think this will be great. As we figure this out.
That's great. Yeah, that's great, Carl. I appreciate that feedback. I think we talked about that, I don't know, a couple months ago even. And it's true, because we did topical messages. You could pretty much fit anything into the rooted box. But then it did become disjointed. I feel like this one, since we are literally agreeing with John all year long, it checks that box a little bit better. But I do like the idea of a unified graphics. I think you don't want people to get bored with the graphics, but it could be something that that if it is unified, we definitely have the overall logo so far. If any of you guys, I don't know if any of you guys are graphically are good at graphics, so you might be at my mercy. We could get Ben Weatherston to help out maybe. give it a shot. So he made the Rooted logo. But yeah, I think that's great, Carl. Any other thoughts? That's a great thought.
How does midweek work? Because I mean, everything's very detailed, but is midweek, would there be any kind of like, I don't know, template for midweek or anything like that?
Josh, you want to take that one?
Yeah, so for 2022, every week of 2022, I provided like small group discussion notes, which in our small church, we're not meeting for midweek every week. We're meeting in house churches. So that served the needs for our group, but it wouldn't be like, now here's a follow-up midweek lesson that you could preach that fits into the theme. It was all discussion questions. So it was basically like, here's the main ideas from the sermon, and you had some inspiration and some information from Sunday, but now how do we turn that into application in your own life? So I could continue to provide that level, just about a page or two of here are the main points, and here's some questions that you could pass off to your house church leaders that they could then use. But it doesn't address if you're meeting weekly in midweeks as a whole church.
I do think a lot of people used those to create midweek lessons, though, and so it was super integrated. But I think because this is such a you could do that. You could take Josh's discussion notes and turn them into a related midweek lesson, or you could do something very different on midweek, like to address more of the urgent needs. I think expository preaching can and does address urgent needs more than people think it does. But you know, if you needed to do a series on you know, social media or on politics or whatever, you could do that instead. So there's some freedom there.
Yep.
Any other thoughts or questions? This is good.
I was just thinking through an element that we didn't have, which was even shorter than prompts to, you know, for a whole small group to go through, like even smaller focus of what about discipleship groups? And I think I don't know, that could be a potential good thing to have, even if it was just, here's one passage from the sermon and here's 3 or 4 questions, just to get people going in the right direction for their discipleship group. That could be helpful. That could be an add-on to what I'm already doing, where it's like, well, here's the context of your small group or your house church, and here's even smaller focus with your team. I'm not 100% sure.
I love that so much. Yeah. Because I think if we could make it into if you could make that into like a graphic, it could be something that we post on Facebook and Instagram every week. And so that would be great for the disciples to use, but also it'd be awesome for outreach. And so
I was envisioning it in that way as well. If it's an Instagram post, it might be 3 images that all go along with one another as a graphic, but then the first one is a passage, the next one is a question, the next thing is a challenge. And so if it just always follows that pattern, it could be pretty simple. 1 verse, 1 question, 1 challenge.
Oh my gosh, I love that. It was hard not to type it in all caps. That's how excited I was about that idea.
The downfall with that is all of the algorithms say that if it's text, it just doesn't get a lot of engagement. And so we could be pumping these things out, but that's an unknown for me, because whenever you put out kind of like information heavy graphics on social media, they just don't go anywhere. Like, you got to have somebody's face on it, or else the algorithms just put it off to the side.
We could just find different people named John and take pictures of them and put their faces up. And it could be like an arrow that says, not this John. And
then the next thing is just a quote from John.
This John. Yeah, maybe something like that. We have like 5 Johns in our church, and they're all like really excited. They're like, maybe my marriage will be better now because my wife will agree with me. So like it'll be on a shirt, you know what I mean? Okay. Any other thoughts? This is really good. Okay, I'm looking at the spreadsheet here, and I still need Arlie. I sent you a Google through your email a document. I don't know if I have the right email for you that works with Google Drive.
Yeah, I received that email with all the documents.
Okay,
Thank you.
cool. If you can fill that out, so I can send you the book on expository preaching. And Rusty, I need you and Ryan too, Ryan Painter. If you guys fill that out, that'd be awesome. And then I'll send you guys the full folder. The folder that folder will get populated throughout the year with all the things. The I agree with John folder. So that'd be cool. All right, so let's talk about for the next meeting. So I think, I think there's a few other guys, maybe not by many or by few. This is great. We will go through those first 5 chapters of John. So it's December 6th. What day is that? A Thursday?
No, it's a Tuesday, and I was going to ask you about that, Joel. That is right in the middle of our Midwest church leaders meetings.
Well, that's not going to work. Where'd my phone go?
That's good because it wouldn't work for me or Rusty either. We've got a
You guys have a thing too? Okay.
thing in Cincinnati.
My goodness. If I can't find my phone, nothing's ever going to work ever again in my life. There we go. Okay. Got it.
December 6th is a Tuesday, and yeah, that Tuesday in particular is the long day of our Midwest church leaders.
Okay. I'm gonna stop the recording real quick, and then we'll keep talking though. So thank you for watching this. If you watched this, I hope it made sense and helped you.